Well, more than a third of the UK population is now living under heightened restrictions after lockdown. Well, local lockdowns came into effect in 4 more regions. Joining me live from Oxford to discuss this further is Forbes journalist Will Godley. Will, what kind of restrictions have been imposed?
Well, it's rather confusing, really, at the moment. In the UK as a whole, there is a national restriction where you're not allowed to socialise in groups of more than 6, and pubs, bars and restaurants all close at 10 p.m. But more locally, as you were saying there's lots of local restrictions, which are a ban on household mixing. So you're not allowed to go over to your friend's house, to your boyfriend, to your girlfriend's house. You're advised against going to pubs, bars and restaurants with people who aren't in your household as well.
Is it likely the country will return to a full national lockdown? We just heard some fears from individuals, particularly from small business.
Well, it's certainly on the cards, and I'm sure they're talking about that as we speak in Parliament. Boris Johnson is under a lot of pressure from his backbench MPs to try and wait and see what these current restrictions are like and the effect that they will have on stemming the virus and its growth rate. Especially the ones in the north, those MPs who are representing the constituents in the north, they really don't want these measures to get any worse. There are businesses on the brink of collapse. There are many people in the north who are quite frankly struggling a lot more than in the south. Of course, London being in the south of England where Parliament meet, we had an MP from Scotland who tested positive, who was speaking in the House of Parliament on Monday and then travelled on the train back to Scotland whilst knowing she was positive as well. So Parliament are going to be having a lot of questions being asked of them. Whether this will go nationally, I think we're going to have to wait and see, because there is this huge disparity between the growth rate. In the south of England, where I am in Oxford, it's not so bad, and in London, but in the north, a lot worse.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson has blamed complacency for the recent spike. Do you think that's a fair comment?
Yes, I think that's fair to say. I think if we think back to the summer, we had our Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which was a scheme set up by Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor here, which is probably why he is the most popular member of government at the moment. This was a scheme where food was half price, up to £10. So there was a lot of socialising going on over the summer, which then encouraged people to sort of carry that on into September. But of course, as schools opened and as universities reopened, we saw that coronavirus spike go completely through the roof. And we're in the situation we are now. We're having to impose these new restrictions.
Will, there's a lot of focus on the area where you live in Oxford because that is one of the epicentres of a possible vaccine. Where are we with all of that?
Well, it's all in research. They're keeping it under wraps at the moment. They're doing a lot of testing for the virus to check it's safe, going through the ethic regulations. There was a halt just a couple of weeks ago when one of the patients who was volunteering to undergo trials for this vaccine had an adverse reaction to it. And so they had to pause it and check that it was all going okay. But they seem to be back testing it again. They're testing it in the UK, but also in Brazil and North America, where the prevalence of coronavirus is a lot higher.
There's no real talk or time frame. I know that different individuals, different politicians are saying there's going to be one by November, there's going to be one by January. They have been quite conservative in their timelines, haven't they, at Oxford?
Yes, I don't think they want to put a date on it. They don't want that pressure. They want to make sure they're doing it safely and to get it as soon as possible. Of course, they're working round the clock to get it as soon as possible. Some people are saying it will be the end of this year, most likely the beginning of next year. And before it's rolled out fully, it's not going to be a soon solution, shall we say. I think we're going to have these restrictions and social distancing in place for quite a while here in the UK.
And exactly the point we heard in the package just prior to having a chat with you, Will, it's going to be a long winter because the weather this time of year starts to turn and it turns fairly quickly.
It really does, and with it brings in the flu season as well. So as well as having all this rise of COVID cases, we're also having an increase in people with the common cold and the common flu and feeling unwell and wanting to go and get tested, which is why we've seen such a strain and a stress on what the government are calling here in the UK a world-beating testing system. Well, is it? I'm not too sure about that. But the winter is going to be long and cold, and it gets darker here in the UK, and the weather is turning. And there's talk of these restrictions being in place for the next 6 months, which would mean that Boris Johnson would become the Prime Minister who cancelled Christmas. And I'm sure he doesn't want to go down in the history books as the Prime Minister who does that.
Yes, exactly. But it may be the only alternative. Will, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.